Colin Whitaker steered his dusty 1987 pickup down the long stretch of Highway 49, the wind whispering through a half-cracked window. His truck rattled over uneven pavement, the bed loaded with old tools and a blue tarp covering something square and heavy. He wasn't in a hurry. He never was. As he crossed into Trinity County, red and blue lights lit up behind him. A sigh escaped his lips. He pulled over, shifted into park, and kept both hands visible on the steering wheel. Deputy Myers approached from the left, tapping on the window with 2 fingers. His partner, Deputy Rains, stood further back, thumb resting near his holster, license and registration. Colin nodded, moving deliberately. Glove box. Then back pocket. Myers didn't thank him, just snatched the documents and walked back to the E2. Cruiser! Rains stayed near the truck, eyes scanning everything like he expected trouble to jump out of the wheel well. Where you headed? Colin glanced up. East. Farm auction in Milltown. You always carry that much gear for an auction? It's my gear, not for sale. Rains didn't smile. Colin didn't either. Myers returned, waving the documents. Expired tag, cracked taillight. No. Inspection sticker. Busy man? Been working on the land. Didn't notice. That jacket military? Colin's eyes dropped to his faded canvas coat. Small patch on the shoulder, barely visible. Used to be. Long time ago. Myers raised an eyebrow. What branch? I wore green. That's enough. That's not really an answer. It's not really a question. Rains shifted. The tension climbed a notch. Pop the glove box for us? What are you looking for? Routine check. You'll find an old sidearm. Locked, registered, safe. Myers leaned in. You didn't mention that before. You didn't ask. That was enough to change the air. Rains stepped forward, hand near his weapon. Myers opened the door himself. Step out of the vehicle, sir. Colin moved slowly, boots hitting gravel. Hands visible, body steady. It's legal, boys. Been mine since '91. Myers opened the glove box. The pistol sat in a foam case, military markings still faint on the handle. Rains pulled it out, like it might bite. Permit? Inside, coat pocket. Right side, they found it. Read it. Scanned it twice. Still, the cuffs came out. This is unnecessary. We'll decide that. Colin offered no resistance. The metal clicked around his wrists. Not tight, but not gentle either. They walked him back to the cruiser. Rains chuckled. You don't talk much, do you? Said enough already. At the station, he was placed in a holding cell without a word. Myers joked about the silent Rambo with the rusted truck. Rains dropped the pistol in an evidence bag, laughing under his breath. Colin sat on the bench, unmoving. His eyes tracked the ticking clock, then the buzzing light above. He looked like a man waiting for a bus that was never late. When the booking process began, something odd happened. The computer screen flashed red. Not a routine warrant. A priority. Federal flag. Then the phone rang. Myers answered. Stone County Sheriff's Office. A voice cut through sharp and clear. You have Colin Whitaker in custody? Who's asking? This is Agent Palmer, Federal Division. Do not release him. Do not speak to him. Do not touch him. We are on the way. Before Myers could ask another question, the line went dead. Outside, black SUVs rolled into the parking lot, tires silent, movements precise. 4 men in dark suits entered without hesitation. The air in the station shifted like the pressure before a storm. The agents said nothing until the lead one held up his badge. Where is he? Myers pointed, suddenly unsure of his own job. He's just some guy with a gun. The agent's eyes narrowed. That man is not just some guy. You have no idea what you've walked into." Colin looked up through the glass of the holding cell. He didn't smile. He didn't blink. He simply stood, like he'd been expecting them all along. Agent Palmer moved like someone who didn't waste motion. He walked straight past the front desk without speaking, his badge still in hand, his coat barely shifting with each step. Two other agents fanned out toward the computer terminals. Another headed directly for the evidence locker. No confusion. No hesitation. Deputy Rains stood frozen behind his monitor, unsure whether to sit or stand. He exchanged a quick glance with Myers, who was still holding the phone like it hadn't gone dead 3 minutes ago. The station had never been this quiet. Palmer reached the holding cell and stopped inches from the glass. Colin Whitaker stood on the other side, hands resting calmly at his sides. There was no tension in his shoulders, no plea in his eyes. Just patience. The kind that unnerves people. Agent Palmer keyed in the access code himself. The door clicked. "Sergeant, Whitaker, took you long enough? Traffic through Huntsville was murder." Colin stepped out, slow but steady. The stiffness in his legs didn't affect the way he carried himself. He looked like a man who'd walked out of harder places. Palmer motioned to another agent, who handed over a sealed case. Colin opened it, checked the contents, and nodded. "Once? Still clean? Always." Deputy Myers stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Listen, we had no idea who he was. He didn't. Palmer didn't let him finish. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You saw a truck, a jacket, and made up the rest. That choice has consequences." Another agent approached with a printout in hand. He passed it to Rains. "Here's the part you missed. Colin Whitaker, Master Sergeant, Black Echo Unit. Covert fieldwork in Bosnia, Sudan, Kashmir, and Caracas. 3 presidential commendations, 2 unconfirmed operations, and a weapon tied to a still-classified extraction in Libya." Myers blinked, lips parting slightly. That pistol was from Libya? It was used to extract Senator Mathis in '93. Mission still sealed. The gun itself is technically federal property on permanent loan due to service clearance. And you bagged it like it was a street weapon. Rains shifted uncomfortably. Palmer stepped closer. "You think this is a game?" His name triggers federal monitors. "That alert you saw, there's a reason it exists. Someone leaks a name like his, and enemies resurface. You think he's being watched for fun? Why would he still be flagged? Because people like Whitaker did things that governments forgot how to admit. And some of those things still matter." Colin remained silent, watching everything. Palmer turned to him. "We need to leave. Safe house protocol. Digital signature of this arrest's already been picked up. We assume someone's looking." "Understood." As they prepared to exit, Myers raised a hand slightly. "Why didn't you say who you were?" Colin finally spoke. "Because a man shouldn't have to explain his worth to anyone with a badge." Palmer paused. "We need full access to all video, audio, and logs since his arrest. We'll be taking the footage. Internal review starts now." Deputy Rains took a shaky step back. "You mean we're being investigated? If the report is honest, and the footage clean, it'll show. If not, that's on you." Another SUV arrived outside. This one bore no markings, but agents opened the door before it stopped fully. Timing precise. No wasted motion. Myers stood near the door as Colin approached to leave. The older man paused. "You ever stop someone because they didn't fit the picture? In your head? Happens fast. Easy mistake. But some mistakes travel far. I didn't mean, I know. That's the problem. People rarely do. The agents moved around them with practiced silence, securing files, recording drives, collecting body cam footage. It was a sweep, and it didn't feel like protocol. It felt like containment. Palmer turned to Mendel, the officer, who had stayed quiet during it all. Were you involved in the initial stop? I was working dispatch. Good. You're clear. The rest of you, stay available for internal contact. If anything in your statements conflicts with video, we'll know. Colin moved toward the exit. His boots echoed on the floor. As he reached the threshold, he glanced back once. You judged me without knowing the trail behind me. Just a file now, right? But the truth doesn't stay buried forever. Palmer gestured to the waiting vehicle. Let's go. The window's closing. As the doors shut behind them, no one in the station moved. They just listened to the fading sound of an engine they couldn't stop and a man they never understood. Rain began to tap lightly against the cruiser windows as the unmarked SUV carrying Colin Whitaker disappeared into the dark. Back at the sheriff's station, silence lingered like smoke. The deputies stood still, unsure whether to return to their desks or pretend the last hour hadn't just rearranged everything they thought they knew. Mendel sat at her station, watching the door close. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, but didn't move. Every laugh, every sarcastic remark from earlier now sat heavy in the air. She reached into her drawer and slowly pulled out a notepad. On the first line, she scribbled a single sentence. We didn't listen. In the evidence room, the sealed case that had held Colin's sidearm was now just an empty shell. Raines stared at it, guilt creeping into the edges of his expression. He rubbed his neck and sat down, jaw tight, eyes glassy. He wasn't ready to say anything out loud. Myers stood at the back of the room, arms crossed, watching the playback, footage on a monitor. He watched himself approach the truck, watched how quickly his voice turned sharp, how easily he dismissed everything the man said. No aggression, no resistance, just calm. And they met it with doubt. In the video, Colin had said something that now rang louder than before. You judged me by the jacket, not the journey. Outside the building, headlights swept across the gravel again. This time, it wasn't another federal SUV. A local news van parked, and two people climbed out, one with a camera, the other adjusting a mic. Someone had tipped them off. Perhaps someone inside, hoping for attention, or maybe just chasing drama. Inside the federal vehicle, Agent Palmer sat across from Colin. The older man rested against the seat, eyes forward. His hands were clasped loosely in his lap. You good? Colin didn't answer right away. Then he said quietly, I've been treated worse. That's not what bothers me. Palmer waited, giving him space. It's how fast they decided what I was. All it took was a jacket, an old truck, and brown skin. Nobody asked anything. Just figured I was another problem to process. You're not the first, Palmer replied, and you won't be the last. Colin's voice lowered. That's the part that stings. Palmer said nothing for a while. The road ahead was long and empty, surrounded by nothing but pine trees and wet asphalt. He checked his tablet as they drove. 3 minutes ago, someone accessed an old FOIA leak. One of your mission logs just got pinged again. Guess your timing was perfect, Colin muttered. They rode in silence another few miles before Palmer said, We're moving you to a different safe point. Secure zone outside Baton Rouge. Your file's getting reclassified again. I figured as much. Palmer studied him. You ever think of disappearing completely? Every day. But then I remember, silence doesn't change anything. It just makes it easier to forget the people who carried more than they should have. At the sheriff's office, the news crew was held outside, but the tension had already cracked through the walls. Internal Affairs had been notified. Body cam footage was uploading to a secure server. Nobody was laughing anymore. Mendel stood at the window, arms folded. She turned when a young man in a gray hoodie stepped inside, holding a plain envelope. "I was told to give this to Deputy Mendel." "That's me." He handed it over, nodded, and left without waiting. Inside the envelope was a single handwritten letter. The penmanship was tight, practiced, careful. "You didn't owe me anything, but you saw what others didn't bother to. That says something. I don't want apologies. I've already lived through worse, but I hope what happened becomes more than paperwork. Maybe next time, someone asks first." Colin Whitaker, she read it twice, then pinned it inside her locker door. 2 weeks later, Trinity County Sheriff's Office looked the same on the outside. Inside, it felt different, quieter, more aware. The jokes weren't as casual. The assumptions took longer to form. Myers was on leave, pending review. Raines was reassigned to administrative duties. Neither protested. At a small veterans outreach center in Mississippi, Colin sat on a bench beside a younger man named Eli. The kid spoke fast, hands fidgeting, eyes scanning everything like danger could appear at any second. "I don't sleep. I can't even sit in a booth at a diner without checking exits." "You're not broken," Colin said. "You're carrying too much weight in the wrong places. How long does it last? It doesn't end, but you learn where to put it, so it doesn't crush you." The younger man stared at him, breathing slow. For the first time in days, his hands stopped moving. Back in Trinity County, Mendel closed her locker and looked around. No applause. No speech. Just a quiet understanding. Sometimes the loudest change happens when no one is watching.